Thank you, Tom. Thank you. Yes, so, I expect you're thinking, Deobandi and pacifism, Pashtoon and pacifism. This person has really gone off the rails, taking things a bit too far, taking the concept of pacifism a bit too far. So I hope to, to put that myth to bed once and for all, because, it's, Deobandi, people know Deobandi nowadays, and but to go back to the origins of Deoband, 1857 was the time of the mutiny in India, and it was mainly though Hindus would nowadays challenge that, but it was mainly a Muslim mutiny movement, rebellion, north of Delhi, and then moved to Delhi, and then it was cruelly and savagely afterwards repressed and punished by the East India Company, as it was then, and by the British government of India. And then the Muslims realized that, force is not going to get us anywhere against the British. It's not going to free India. It's not going to get us anywhere. And so they established two institutes of learning. One was Deoband and one was Aligarh, completely on peaceful and educational academic grounds. That the Deoband approach was that we'll have a fortress of Islamic knowledge which will resist attempts by the British to impose their ideas on us. And Aligarh, which was the other example, Aligarh Muslim University, which nearby Deoband, will be. We can go to the picture of Deoband if you like. Oh, right, I've got it here. Yeah, sorry, that's much better. That's much better. So, yeah. So the other one was the Aligarh, which is the Aligarh Muslim University, which was the opposite approach. Okay, the British have brought, science and modern technology, modern learning to India, so we should make the most of that. We should adopt Western types of, we should welcome Western education in order to get on in the world, to get on in British India as it was then. So there were two different educational, but both educational and both peaceful approaches. But, then both are very different. And if you look at the pictures, this Aligarh Muslim University, the people studying there, they could really be Deobandi students, particularly the ones in the foreground. And this has taken a couple of, just in the last week, actually, entrance exam at Darul Uloom Deoband. So, quite a lot of opportunity for cribbing there, I should think, But, how did all this start? You can see what Deoband has come nowadays. And, people here also, Blackburn, full of Deobandi madrasas, Not only Blackburn, Lancashire, Yorkshire, America, full of Deobandi madrasas. The most influential, it's Islamic academic movement, not only in India, but in Pakistan, in Bangladesh, in Nepal, in Burma, in Afghanistan, and in the United Kingdom, West Indies, South Africa, America, all over the world, basically. What did it start? It started with a tree in that's the tree, not much shade, but lots of branches. And so, so there were two people. There was Maulana Qasim Nanuti, who was the founder of Darul Uloom Deoband, and there was Sheikh al-Hind, Mahmud al-Hassan. He was the student. Sheikh al-Hind, Mahmud al-Hassan was the student, and the Maulana Qasim Nanuti was the teacher. So these two people came to represent the two strands of Deoband. So Maulana Qasim Nanuti was very much, stability, peace, academic endeavor. Sheikh al-Hind, revolutionary, and I call it militant tendency, really, of Sheikh al-Hind, that, no, we carry on this rebellion against the British. And so, of course, in that, Sheikh al-Hind looked very much to the frontier, the warlike Pashtoons, that, that they would support Sheikh al-Hind in what really were his very grandiose schemes to rid the subcontinent of British rule. So Sheikh al-Hind, basically, he had this idea that I'll get the Turks to, support my ideas, and I'll get the Afghanistan to sort of also collaborate, and the Turks and the Germans will also join them because they're allies in the First World War, and they'll come to Afghanistan and they'll liberate India from British rule. So, well, anyway, Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan started off very much also with an academic approach, and he had set up independent schools. But these independent schools then became, were sort of hijacked really by Sheikh al-Hind's ideas of, forcefully through the Turks and the Germans and Afghanistan, liberating India from British rule. So Sheikh Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan had never actually criticized, he never criticized directly Sheikh al-Hind, but he indirectly criticized him by saying in his autobiography that, if the Turks and the Germans are going to liberate India from the British, then they're not going to give India to us. They're going to keep it to themselves. So, that wouldn't have been much good. And, we have to do something ourselves. So Khan Abdul Ghaffar, this is the 1969 visit of Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan to India, the only foreigner to ever receive the highest civilian award of India, Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan, and known, of course, and very appropriately as the Frontier Gandhi. So the grandiose scheme, they went to this. They went to Saudi Arabia, and they were trying to talk to the governor there, and Ghalib Pasha was his name, the governor, the Turkish governor. But it was just actually happened to be the time when the Arab uprising, which became very famous in this country because of the involvement of Lawrence of Arabia, became successful. And so then they were arrested. These people, where these revolutionaries come from Deoband, and then they put them in prison on the island of Malta. So they were there for about 4 or 5 years, and then they were released in 1920. So, and then, rather belatedly, I must say, Sheikh al-Hind embraced nonviolence, and his statement supporting Mahatma Gandhi came to meet him when he arrived back in India, Sheikh al-Hind, and he formally adopted also the Aligarh approach of, and he set up Jamia Millia, and we have a speaker coming who was qualified from Jamia Millia Islamia, talking about Kashmir. And, so he adopted also, embraced it, the AMU, the Aligarh Muslim University approach, and also he embraced nonviolence, and so this was then the militant tendency of Deoband, also embracing nonviolence. So I'm going to do a lot of things through stories because I'm sort of used to that, explaining things through stories. Just how far Deoband had embraced non-violence and the civil disobedience of Mahatma Gandhi, and there can be no, pacifist, non-violent conference which doesn't mention again and again Mahatma Gandhi. This might be the only one which mentions the Frontier Gandhi, as he's known very much in India. But just to show how much Deoband had embraced this civil disobedience and non-violent non-cooperation with the British. So there were there was an ashram and there was a madrasa in Roorkee. It's just north of Deoband, very close to Deoband, famed for its engineering college. And so there was a madrasa there called Madrasa Rahmania. And there was an ashram which belonged to an English lady called Beatrice Cook. Beatrice Cook was a follower of the Swami Vivekananda Ramakrishna order, and a lot of European and particularly English devotees had been attracted by the allure, I think, of Swami Vivekananda particularly, and had embraced, were followers of the Ramakrishna order. So she had set up an ashram there. And the Ramakrishna order, just like Deoband, were very much, had become tainted in the eyes of the British by, by their association with Indian nationalism. And so the Ramakrishna order were very strict and said that none of our adherents are to have any involvement in the civil disobedience because they were really scared they might be closed down. And they were close to being closed down during the time of the First World War. And Deoband had no such compunctions, and they just carried on. They said, we will be involved, but we'll be non-violently involved in this the struggle for Indian independence. So there were atrocities, there were reprisals against the population, against the citizens of Roorkee. And Beatrice Cook, she was known as Mother in her ashram, Mataji. And she came out of our ashram in order to help people. And her fellow sadhus, her fellow sannyasin said, no, you can't do this, we're not allowed, and this is political involvement. She said, it's not, it's humanitarian. My work is humanitarian. So that's how she came into the arms of the Deobandis, and actually quite literally into the arm, after a while, to Maulana Uzair Gul, because they eventually married, actually. This Maulana Uzair Gul and Beatrice Cook, and she became Muslim, and she was won over by this approach of the Deobandis to be sort of their patriotism and their pacifism added to their piety. And so she was, so that's how these, united in non-violence, and it shows the commitment of the Deobandis to the non-violent struggle. So, I do want to get into the modern age, and particularly in Afghanistan, and we'll do it through, stories. This, I learned my storytelling in Deoband. People think it's, very strange. You think if you become, still people say to me, as I said the other day, an alim doing what you do, sort of thing, It's really crazy, Broaden the horizons of people who've studied in madrasas. That's really been my commitment ever since I graduated from Deoband, 40 years ago now. So my storytelling, I learned it in Deoband, but that seems to be a very strange trajectory to many people. But that I've taken this trajectory is because of this gentleman, Maulana Wahihuddin Khan, because, you do apprenticeship. You leave madrasa, you leave Deoband, and you do apprenticeship. And I happened to do apprenticeship in journalism with Maulana Wahihuddin Khan, and it happened also to be an apprenticeship in pacifism, because his journalism is always peace-oriented. And this is him receiving the Rajiv Gandhi Peace Award from Sonia Gandhi. So he, his book, I have it with me, Amni Alam, World Peace. I think, that one could say the basic tenets, and if I do get a chance, I tend to go on for too long. This I do get a chance, I want to go into this, that, that fitna, to eliminate religious persecution, that was the original, وَقَاتِلُوهُمْ حَتَّى لَا تَكُونَ فِتْنَةٌ. You're allowed to fight so that religious persecution is eliminated. Now, religious persecution is eliminated. In the world, there's no religious persecution. If you fight nowadays, you're going to bring persecution among yourself. It will be the opposite of what you are, fighting can be justified for. So that's what I think can say, the basis of Maulana Wahihuddin Khan's pacifism, which I hope I adopted, and I hope I can take forward. So, as I learned my storytelling, so then, obviously when the BBC in 1993 were appointing somebody, the Times actually, they had a diary in those days, and they joked about it. The BBC is setting up an Archers for Afghanistan. They thought that was crazy, well, they appointed me, to set up this Archers for Afghanistan. That was even more crazy of them. So so then, we started off this Archers for Afghanistan. The first scene was, people don't realize, they think the sort of, the Taliban brought war to Afghanistan, There was war a long time before the Taliban came, And and that time, 1993, was the interregnum between the fall of the government of Najibullah and the ascension to power of the Taliban. It was a time when if you wanted to live, I had a car once, and I was trying to go to Kunar, which is one province in Afghanistan, and I got to the sort of border of a certain district, and the guy said to me in a very friendly way, look, if you want to keep your car, you better stay out of this district. Because, there's 150 checkposts in this district, and they're just going to take your car off you. They're not going to, you're not going to. So I said, I'll go back, thanks very much. But, that was the situation. So they, now you'll think I'm even more crazy talking about the Taliban and peace, So, but the Taliban did come to power in 1994 on a peace ticket, to get rid of these commanders, these gunslingers, as they call them, Tobakyan. That's the word in Pashto, to get rid of the gunslingers. That was what brought them to power. They came to power on a peace ticket. What happened afterwards? That's a different matter. But so I would say even that it was the Taliban and our Archers for Afghanistan that actually sort of got rid of the commanders, because we also our first scene was actually a refugee family returning and being fleeced when they got back to Afghanistan, and by these commanders. It was just absolute. I have two cases. People have come to me and they said to me, I went to this checkpost, and they were looking for you in person at that checkpost, and another checkpost. And they mentioned the checkpost, and they mentioned that so, it's just, it was a time of extreme danger to travel in Afghanistan before the Taliban came to power. And so, I was in Ghazni after the commanders and we got rid of. And one commander, I met him, and he said to me, "You're in charge of New Home, New Life." That was the name of the Archers for Afghanistan. You really did a lot of harm to us commanders. He was laughing at me, and sort of laughing with me, so acknowledging our role in, getting rid of these gunslingers and getting rid of these checkposts, and through stories. And so, I've got lots of other examples about, the success of this, and I do want to, at the end, when I talk about a theology of pacifism, I want to talk, about the approach is so important, how you approach people in order to, to generate a discussion and to inculcate certain ideas. So the approach is so important, and not dictating to people. And so, what the thing is about, these stories, they enable people to laugh at themselves. Like I mentioned, this commander, he was laughing at himself. We commanders, we were stupid. And you showed us up. You exposed us. Through your stories, which made people laugh. And then people laugh, and they say, well, actually, recently we had a storyline. Because I've been doing this for the last 30 years. These sort of stories in Afghanistan, and we had a person who was a real villain, and he had a namesake amongst the population, and the person who was his namesake was sort of complaining to us. You're talking about me or something. You're this person who you've depicted as a villain in your soap opera. And we said, no, it's nothing to do with you, you know, it was just sort of picked a name out of the hat sort of thing. And so, you know, it's, but, you know, that sort of thing, people taking it personally, people do take it personally, but in the process, you know, as long as they don't have that particular name, they laugh at themselves also in the process. And that sets in motion a sort of a process of, you know, adopting peace as the best policy. So I would like to sort of go into particularly one storyline that, you know, I wasn't able to, at that time, I was relatively inexperienced and there was resistance to this particular storyline. But it was about you know, this Pashtoons, they're Muslims, but at the same time, they're Pashtoons. And Pashtun, I was saying to someone the other day that it's like a religion with a religion, to be a Pashtun, the code of Pashtun Wali. So they have a thing of giving refuge to people, and usually do-no-gooders. So, you know, so usually to people who are fleeing from the law. They give refuge to them, the panah, it's called panah. And so, you know, I was going to, but the original idea of this was, you know, you give refuge to people who are fleeing from injustice. But, so we were going to have a storyline on this particular subject, but it didn't see the light of day. And up till now, it's been, you know, it's a cause of regret for me, because I feel that this approach would have been very good, you know, as far as, you know, solving this big issue. Now, of course, there's other big issues, and now people have forgotten about Afghanistan, but then the big issue in the world in the late 90s was the existence of one particular individual in Afghanistan who was considered to be the cause of all the world's troubles. So, of course, you know, so that's, of course, it led to the fall of the Taliban government, that particular individual, and so it's very good, you know, you know, our approach would have been, tell a story that, you know, this, you know, if someone's fleeing from injustice, then okay, give them refuge, but if they're fleeing from justice, then they should face justice. But it was very, you know, very enlightening, really, to listen on December 21st, 10 days after 9/11, that this discussion was on CNN. You know, the Suhail Shaheen is still a spokesman of the Taliban. There is no evidence or proof given to us. We'll not be ready to give him up without proof. He wanted evidence. You know, if we're going to extradite this guy, give us evidence. And then the Secretary of State, who was then National Security Advisor, she said, you know, that you're not, you know, you don't believe in Western jurisprudence, we can't give you any proof. So this was obviously, you know, the sort of bullying, patronizing type of approach, which is not going to get you anywhere with Pashtoons. It's not going to get you anywhere with anybody, you know, forget about, you know, let alone Pashtoons. So, and, you know, the Taliban, you know, idea was, you know, that, you know, give us some evidence, we can put him on trial. We can't give him straight to America, you know, that's out of the question, but we can give him to a third Muslim country. But there was no sort of, you know, attempt on the part of the West to, you know, reach any type of compromise. So, or be reasonable, really. So, you know, I think they just wanted to, you know, bomb them into submission. And as we've seen, after 20 years, they came back. And what they used to say to the Americans, okay, the Americans, you've got the watches, but we got the time. We can wait, you know. And then you leave eventually. It's our country, you know. There's mechanisms nowadays whereby you can, you know, you can acquire control of your own country. And, you know, that's something that I've been very surprised. People talk about peace, peace, peace in the West, but, you know, I haven't heard a single voice saying that, you know, should Ukraine, for instance, have actually resisted, you know, and in this resistance, are they destroying their own country, you know? But, you know, couldn't they have sort of utilized the mechanisms that there are nowadays to actually, you know, acquire and reassert control of your own country, rather than, you know, resorting to violence in the face of violence? And actually, I'll sort of, if I do get a chance, you know, I think, you know, because one of the things that Maulana Wahihuddin Khan says, that in self-defense, war is justified. I would take it one further, and it's not. It's not, because of the weaponry that you have, because the Quran says, قاتل الذين يُقَاتِلُونَكُمْ وَلَا تَعْتَدُوا. You're allowed to fight against those who fight against you. Other words, in self-defense. وَلَا تَعْتَدُوا. But you're not allowed to fight against people who are not actively engaged in hostilities against you. You're not allowed to exceed the bounds. So if you're, but any war nowadays is going to exceed the bounds. I mean, look at the war of resistance in Afghanistan, that, you know, okay, and I had discussions on this, you know, suicide bombing with people in Afghanistan, and they said, look, how are we going to answer these daisy cutters and the weaponry that the Americans have? And I said, well, you don't answer it, you know. You change your tactics, you know, so that you don't have to answer it. But they said, you know, we have to answer force by force. So the thing is nowadays, if you're the aggressor or the defender, if you're using modern weaponry, la ta'tadu, you're going to be in contravention of the injunction of the Quran not to exceed the bounds. So the bounds are, So the bounds are that you're not allowed to. So this is, you know, now what I want to sort of end on, and sorry, I must have gone beyond the time, I haven't got a watch. That's intentional sort of thing. But so self-defense is not justified, and to eliminate religious persecution is also not justified. So this is, you know, someone, you know, who's maybe arguably the leading BBC Muslim broadcaster, Mishal Hussain. She said, you know, there has to be a theology of Islamic pacifism. And Muslim scholars have to be taking more of a vocal stance against this, you know, violence and these atrocities. And so I think that's, you know, taking Maulana Wahihuddin Khan's philosophy even one step further. And, you know, because even the justification for war in Islam, self-defense and elimination of religious persecution, that's not valid nowadays. So sorry to over. It's spending too long. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for that very engaging talk, which